Testing, testing. Ready? Good morning, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving, but not Merry Christmas, because we're not there yet. Today we begin Advent, which is a season of quiet waiting and preparation and surrender, letting go. And I've spoken to a few of you this morning. It sounds like a few of you had some very peaceful, lovely Thanksgiving dinner tables. I'm glad you were able to hold the whole of things at your tables with the people you love. So this morning, before we go any further, I would just like to invite us all to take a few moments to get grounded and settle here in this space. Take a few deep breaths. Feel your feet on the floor and respond to the words that I'm about to say with the words that are on the screen. Come as you are, aching, tired, joyful, or seeking. Here we are woven together in love. Set down what you carry and let this be a place of rest. Here we are held in hope and mercy. Be present to yourself, to each other, and to the divine life that flows through all things. Here, together, we find the common thread of divine life that connects us all. This common thread of divine life in which we live and move and have our being, our God, who is lover, beloved, and love overflowing. Amen.
Look, the world is always ending somewhere. Somewhere the sun has come crashing down. Somewhere it has gone completely dark. Somewhere it is ending with the softness of petals falling from their stems. But listen, this blessing means to be your shelter. It will do everything in its power to illuminate the path ahead. By Jan Richardson.
Oh, come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lowly exile here until the Son of God appears. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, death's dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, 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 for the divine shall come to thee, O Palestine. Oh, come beside our friends who suffer so, and open wide their heavenly home. Make safe the way that leads on high, and lead us to the life that never dies. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, to all who suffer still.
Good morning, all, and welcome to Common Thread. I'm Khaki, and I'm supposed to say a little bit about how I came to be the liturgist today. And I did it by coming to Working the Circle, and I saw that this was an option and figured I'm pretty good at this because my husband used to be a minister, and I was often called in to do this at the last minute. And I thought I'd try it out just as me without him sitting back here and me worrying about messing it up. So that's how I've come today. Welcome. If you are a newcomer or old-timer, someone who's been here a year, or someone who used to come years ago, if you found us online or stumbled in from the street, whoever you are, and no matter what brought you here today, you belong. And we are so happy to have you with us this morning. If you want to know more about us, just click this QR code and we'll send you a zero-pressure email with more information, including the option to connect with a live human being, which, if you really want to know what we are about, the best way to go about it is to get a first-hand account where we shine, where we fall short, but mostly how transformation is the aim wherever each of us is on our spiritual journey. Knowing that making that journey together takes us farther than we could ever go on our own. So welcome. An even more heartfelt welcome if you are here and having a hard time today. In our culture, it is our inclination to isolate when the going gets tough. But we know that standing together on our rough days is an act of solidarity, an act of love, and part of what makes our personal collective transformation possible. So each Sunday down the hall, we have a listener who is willing to hold space for us when we are having a challenging time. If you need an ear to listen, a shoulder to cry on, or just a different perspective through which to look at your struggles, head to the library down the hall and someone will be there to hold space for you. And at any time, you can always go to this URL to request support through our community care team. Morgan leads that effort, and if you let her know what's up, she'll get you pointed in the right direction. And now, as we do each week, let's say together, if you are here, you belong. We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light. And we are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath. And as fellow carriers of divine light and divine breath, I invite you all to stand and greet each other.
We had a dead mic for me, not for you. All right, looks like we have a mic. It's great to get a chance to connect with each other. We do that better than just about anything. This is an old German carol that has been revised by our dear pastor, not pasture. Lo, how a rose e'er blooming. And if you know it, please join in. And if you get comfortable with it and it's brand new to you, please join in. Lo, how a rose e'er blooming from tender stem has grown, a sign of life assuming the form we call our own. It came a flower bright amid the cold of winter, when half gone was the night.
fragrance keeps arising and melts the world's cold gloom. This blossom soft and tender with sweetness fills the air, and through its shining splendor brings light to our despair. In every life we see God's birthing and becoming, love's deep humanity. No single one contains it, this mystery divine. The spark in all sustains it, the root in you and I. All sorrow turns to song, the blooming never ceases, and love will make us strong. Lo, how a rose are blooming from tender stem has grown.
Good morning again. This is my favorite time, connecting in the community. And here on the screen, you're going to see several opportunities this week for you to join in and find a place that you want to be. I'd like to talk a little bit about a special announcement that we have. In a few weeks, we'll be offering our first joint service with Ridge Road in their sanctuary to hold space for those having a hard time during the holidays, especially those dealing with loss. It's a longest night or Blue Christmas type event that we are calling Light in the Dark. No need to register, but do come join us if you think you might find support and healing. Or if you are able to offer the same, spread the word, in fact, to anyone you know who might be working through some grief this year. And if you want to participate, reach out to Sue. And don't look at this slide. Sue messed up. So we want you to look at this slide. We want you to know about this. But what I'm going to tell you about is we're hosting winter workshop downstairs. This is where our kids go shopping for their parents and siblings in a winter wonderland of our making. So please help by bringing small unwrapped gift items to donate. We have a wish list of items here at this QR code. So we don't, but it is in the app and on the website. Okay. So we're also looking for adult help with wrapping and supervising on the day of the workshop. So please register if you'd like to help with that. And if you missed anything or you want to dive deeper, you can find out one of three ways: in the app, on the website, or the weekly email.
Thank you. Ooh. Thank you, Khaki. Let's give Khaki a hand. First-time liturgist for us, but many-time liturgist in her former life. All right, folks. First thing I want to do real quick is just point out on the last day of November, we're going to talk about our October financial report. If you sign up for our regular emails, then you already got all this information in your email a couple of weeks ago, but I just wanted to point out that yes, we went over budget this past month, but this was by far the best month of giving that we had was in October, and so thank you so much for your generosity. We are not concerned about things, but please continue to give. If you haven't begun to give, now might be a good time to start thinking about it. We have lots of plans for next year, and it's going to require some dollars for us to be able to do some of the things that we as a community have said that we want to do. And so when you invest in spiritual community, in this spiritual community, whether it is your time, your energy, your talent, and the dollars it takes to run things, then you are contributing to this continuing to be a space where we can grow in the spiritual life together, hold each other, and transform. So thank you so much for all that you do to make that possible. Had a couple other sort of last-minute things to talk with you about that I did not want to throw on Khaki on her first day. So on December 7th and 14th, I wanted to give you all a heads up that the theater company is going to be here, the aggregate theater company, the kids' productions. I think they're doing Willy Wonka and something called Band Geeks. So that's two different shows. So the good news is the set will not be here in the room, and I think that's one of the issues we had over the summer was a lot of stuff was piled up in that corner, and it was really challenging for us in some ways. But we will have risers, and we will have lights, and we will have these windows darkened, but just for 2 weeks, not an entire span of 5 months or however long that went on for a while over the summer. So the other thing is that this theater company will not be doing any more productions in this space. They have realized their limitations. They do Broadway-style shows in here, and it's just not set up for that, and they've learned that, and we've learned that. But they're still partnering with us, and they will still be here for rehearsals and such. And one other thing, which I don't have up here on the slide, but you see these slips of paper at your tables. This is for the blessing bags that we do on Christmas Eve. So you know that we do this soup and bread event. Obviously, not everybody can make it to that when they have other family obligations and travel, but this is something that we do every year. And then as we depart that evening, we bring these bags that have items in them for folks who are unhoused. And so if you will take that slip of paper, see what it is that you can provide. I'm assuming, Preston, I'm sorry, I did not look at the slip, but I'm assuming that what you need to know is there and or on the website. You can check that out and or in the app. Okay, now let me just ask everybody again to take another deep breath. As I said before, and as you know, probably from what's happening up here on the stage, we are in a particular liturgical season, the season of Advent. And so we're going to do an Advent-themed contemplative practice. And if you were here last year during Advent, or if you were here this year, we have pulled this chant out a few times. It's very appropriate for Advent, light in the dark. Maria and I came to know of this chant with some of the work that we do with another group, some spiritual work that we do with some folks, and she had gone to a retreat last year, and the minister or the priest, I think, who was on the way to that retreat just wrote this in the car while he was there. He was just inspired, and we've been inspired by it ever since. So what we're going to do is we're going to chant a few lines together, and Joe and Melissa will lead you in that. And then we're going to sink into some quiet, and I'm going to lead you in a meditation, and then we'll come back to the chant again. But before we do it, again, I want us to be deeply grounded, and I'm going to ask us all, again, we've done this before, see if we can begin by humming, which grounds us, it regulates our nervous systems, and it connects us to each other. So take a few deep breaths. If you feel so inclined, hum with me. do that one more time.
Light in the dark, dark in the light.
Dark in the light.
Lead us, O Lord,
Lead us, O Lord,
by a different side.
by a different side.
Light in the dark,
Light in the dark.
dark in the light.
Dark in the light.
Lead us, O Lord,
Lead us, O Lord,
by a different side.
by a different side.
Let your jaws drop. Invite you to close your eyes if that feels good to you. Feel your feet on the floor and feel them grounding you. Let your jaw relax. Soften the space behind your eyes. Just let it go soft. And as your breath settles, imagine you're letting this whole past Thanksgiving week settle with it. All the noise, all the rushing, all the overdoing that the holiday season sneaks in on us. Let's just lower it all by a degree. Now I invite you to gently bring your attention to that space in you where your longing lives. Not a frantic kind of longing, not a, oh, I need to get my life together longing, not that, but the deeper one. That deeper longing in which you want to rest when the world is spinning around you. You can touch that longing. Know that that is a sign of your awakening. That's where Advent begins, not in clarity, not in certainty, but in the dark, where we can become aware of that quiet ache, the one that reaches toward what is true and sacred and real. See if you can open to that possibility that the sacred is moving in the dark, humming under the surface of things, whispering beneath all the noise. Let your breath meet that place. Let it widen you and soften you. And very gently, notice if there is anywhere inside you that feels dim or confused or heavy this morning. Not to judge it, but to see it. Advent doesn't ask us to escape the dark. It asks us to awaken within it. To let our eyes adjust to trust that even here, maybe especially here, a deep hope is learning how to breathe. So as we sit together in this quiet space, imagine the dim place inside being met by the faintest glimmer of light. Light in the dark. Breathe with that. Let it make just a little more room. And as we return to our chant, you might simply whisper inwardly, "Here I am. I am awake enough for now." Let hope rise where it will, and trust that this quiet, honest presence is more than enough for light to pierce the dark and to be led by a different sight.
Light in the dark, dark in the light. Lead us, O Lord, by a different side. Light in the dark, dark in the light. Lead us, O Lord, by a different side. Light in the dark, dark in the light. Lead us, O Lord, by a different side. Light in the dark, dark in the light. Lead us, O Lord, by a different side.
A reading from the Gospel according to Mark. In those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. He will send out the angels to gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. But about that day or hour no one knows. Not the angels, not the Son, but only the Father. So beware. Keep alert. You do not know when the time will come. What I say to you, I say to all. Keep awake. But in those days the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven. Happy holidays, everyone. I mean, seriously, what's going on with this gospel reading today? This is not exactly the cozy beginning we expect for the season now upon us. The world around us is already deep into Christmas. Trees are up everywhere. Mariah Carey has emerged from hibernation. Peppermint has taken over the planet, and you walk into Target in mid-November and it feels like Christmas beat us there by a month. Our cultural calendar jumps straight into celebration, but the spiritual calendar starts somewhere very different. Not with a cozy nativity scene, but with shadows, silence, and these strange apocalyptic words from Jesus. Because today, whether we realize it or not, is New Year's Day for the church. The liturgical year begins before Christmas, and it begins with Advent. And Advent is about waiting. Not waiting for Santa or even just waiting for the baby Jesus. It's about waiting from a different posture. A posture that invites us to slow down, be present to the moment, to wake up to what's actually happening and pay attention to whatever the moment is revealing. And that word reveal is key. Most of us don't hear revelation when Jesus starts using words like this. We hear apocalypse. And for many of us, that word still carries the old weight. Punishment, end times charts, cosmic doom. If you grew up evangelical, your stomach might have just done a little flip when I read that passage. But the thing is, the unsettling is intentional. Apocalyptic language is supposed to interrupt us. It calls us out of sleepwalking. It shakes us out of our usual autopilot ways of living so something real can rise to the surface. And that's why the most important line in this whole passage isn't about falling stars and cosmic doom. It's stay awake. Not anxious awake, not hypervigilant awake, but spiritually awake. Present and tuned to what's real beneath all the noise. Because once we're awake, even a little, something shifts. The discomfort becomes a doorway. It's a doorway into the deeper currents of our own lives, into longing, into that quiet tug that whispers to all of us, there has to be more than all of this. And we miss that opportunity completely when we're asleep in our own lives, distracted, numbed, or racing through our days. Especially in a season this loud and hurried, that longing doesn't disappear, it just gets buried. And it shows up as stress, irritability, that sense of being behind. Or it gets smothered by the overdoing, overscheduling, overspending, overeating, overperforming. And in that sleepwalking state, every inner tremor can feel like a catastrophe. The smallest crack in our composure feels like the sky is falling. The frenzy outside becomes the doom inside, and no wonder falling stars and shaking heavens sound like a threat. Because when we're exhausted, even revelation feels like danger. But the moment we wake up, stop, breathe, pay attention, everything changes. What felt like doom starts to look like an ache pointing somewhere. The longing we've been trying to outrun reveals itself as that steady pull toward what is true and holy and real. And from that awakened place, we can finally hear Jesus' words for what they are, not a forecast of destruction, but an invitation into revelation. Because in Greek, apocalypsis doesn't mean destruction at all. It means unveiling, disclosure, the curtain pulled back, not the end of the world, but the end of a world too small to hold what's real. That's why the final book of the Bible is called Revelation. It's not a horror story, but a revealing of what lies beneath the noise and illusion. And seen this way, Jesus' words stop sounding like doom and start sounding a little more like diagnosis. Something false is ending. Something real is trying to break through, and only an awakened heart can tell the difference. So once we let apocalypse mean revelation, we're left with the question Advent asks us each year. A revelation of what? What is falling away? What is being unveiled? What is waiting in the dark beneath the crumbling surface? Because something always is. It's true in our personal lives, and our own moment in history feels like a revelation in the form of an unraveling. We've talked about this here for years. Principles that once felt stable no longer do. Spaces that once felt sacred are showing their hollowness. Systems we trusted are exposing their cracks. It's as though the scaffolding we leaned on for generations is dissolving, and we're seeing, sometimes for the first time, that much of what we thought was real could never hold the whole of things in the first place. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the institutions we once relied on. Religious, political, educational, civic, so many have been losing their soul. Journalism that once held truth and accountability now far more often rewards outrage and speed. Higher education that once formed minds and spirits now produces anxiety and debt. Workplaces that once cultivated vocation and craft now leave people gigged out, burned out, or easily replaced. Neighborhoods that once wove families together now feel like parallel solitudes. We wave politely to neighbors whose names we never learn. And churches? Well, this is where the revealing is perhaps most obvious. As more and more people over the past few decades have quietly wrestled with doctrine, as deconstruction began to name what no longer felt true, something in our gatherings started to hollow out. Across so many Protestant and Catholic churches alike, Sunday mornings have become marked by dreary, half-baked homilies. Music going through the motions, liturgy rushed or rote, the sense of sacred presence quietly diminished, as are the numbers of people in the pews. And in response, churches have scrambled to save themselves. Some traded vestments for blue jeans and Bibles for TED Talks, hoping relevance could stand in for depth. And for a while, they can. But without soul, the experience skims the surface rather than leading to transformation. Other churches tightened their grip on doctrine. More rules, more dogma, more certainty, more this is how it is. But without tending the inner life, even that clarity narrows, offering order perhaps, but not the spaciousness where spiritual growth can take root. And the result is now impossible to ignore. Pew Research tells us that mainline churches have declined by nearly a third in the last decade. That's 33% in 10 years. But it's not because people have stopped seeking. It's because, in part, the stories so many churches were telling simply got too small. And when the story felt too small, we did what humans do. We tried to fix it with a better story. We tried to explain our way into meaning, better arguments, cleaner theology, more precise frameworks. Whether it's the church or any other institution we're trying to repair, we almost always reach first for the tools we already know: explanation, clarity, instruction, control. But the size of the story is only part of the problem. The deeper truth is that something essential slipped out of the center, the soul of the thing, the aliveness, the depth people could feel even if they couldn't name it. And without that living center, even the best stories can only take us so far. So if we wonder why our institutions feel hollow, it's because the same spiritual hunger we kept trying to manage with our minds began to shape the systems we built. As our collective way of seeing narrowed, so did the institutions that reflected us, organizing life around analysis, efficiency, certainty, and control. They mirror something that has been happening inside us for centuries: a slow constriction of vision, a narrowing of what we recognize as real, a cultural training that elevated one way of knowing above all the others. Now, as we've mentioned a few times this month, mid-20th century philosopher Jean Gebser had a name for this: the mental rational structure of consciousness. The mode of awareness that prizes logic, clarity, analysis, and proof. All good and necessary gifts, but intellectual brilliance becomes a problem when it becomes a monopoly. Because when the mental rational becomes the only lens we trust, everything gets routed through the mind, including our spiritual lives. And then something subtle and devastating begins to happen. We try to live a fundamentally spiritual life with tools meant for management and control. We try to think our way to wisdom, explain our way to transcendence, organize our way to transformation. And that just doesn't work. Using the analytical mind as our primary way of knowing the real is like trying to play a violin with a chainsaw. There is nothing wrong with a chainsaw, but it is the wrong tool for the job. And so over time, what once carried soul starts to feel strangely hollow. The structures remain, the names remain, the routines remain, but the living center quietly slips away, even as the longing for something deeper continues to grow. And when that longing grows, people don't just drift from institutions into a void. They don't just wander away from church. They step out of a way of seeing that can't hold the fullness of their lives. They go seeking. They go searching for spaces where the mind is welcomed but not worshipped, where the heart and soul and body get to speak to each other again, where mystery isn't something to solve but something to surrender to. And so they find their way to yoga studios and meditation circles, to breathwork classes, to somatic healing work, to online teachers and wisdom traditions that help them drop back into their bodies and their interior life. They reach for anything that can help them touch what they're actually hungry for. And as we have witnessed people slipping quietly out of sanctuaries and into these other spaces that feel more alive, more embodied, more spacious, well, we've been saying for years now with no small amount of confidence here, the church is dying. But Is it really? Because yoga studios and meditation groups aren't the only places people are going when they leave a mainline church. The Hartford Institute for Religion Research reports that megachurch attendance continues to grow year after year, even as denominational churches decline. In megachurches, the belonging feels instantaneous. The production is powerful, and the certainty feels like safety. And in a chaotic world, belonging and certainty are magnetic. And at the same time, Pew shows a striking rise in Orthodox parishes and Latin Rite Catholic communities, especially among younger adults. They are drawn to the reverence, the mystery, the sense of stepping into something weighty and prayer-soaked. You might have seen a piece in the New York Times this past week that described an Orthodox parish right here in Raleigh as a doorway back into a world that still knows how to pray. That longing is real. The hunger for beauty and presence is real. In other words, no, the church as a whole isn't dying. Not anymore. It's just the versions of church that clung to the construct but lost the presence that are dying. The ones that held onto the scaffolding but let the soul slip away. So, while the hollow versions of church are fading, the ones growing are the ones offering something compelling again, whether that draw comes from emotional intensity or ancient depth. Both can be doorways, but unless we're awake, we can easily mistake the doorway for the destination. Now, for instance, if you were to go to a megachurch, that intensity can sweep you up, but not take you deeper. A mile wide and an inch deep, as one of you said to me during last week's coffee hour. And the belonging is conditional. Step outside the mold and you're out. And the beauty of the Orthodox and Latin forms can be profound, but it can just as easily get braided together with fear or rigidity, with a need to, as we mentioned last week, manage the mystery. And in the US, both megachurches and traditional liturgical ones tend to get tangled up with our culture war version of the mental rational. Purity debates, identity policing, marching orders, tight boundary lines. In fact, one young man in that Times article said, "The Orthodox Church is the only church that really coaches men hard and says this is what you need to do." And this is revealing not because clarity is bad, but because it shows how easily our longing for the sacred can get tangled with our longing to be told exactly who we are, where we belong, and what to do with great certainty. And that's the real tension in these growing churches. Both streams can become places where people cling to the constructs instead of the presence they were meant to carry. Even the beautiful ones, even the ancient ones, even the reverent ones can become a blindfold the moment we cling to them as if they were sacred. They give us the illusion of light, the feeling that we're not in the dark, not vulnerable, not surrendered. They let us pretend we're in control, that with the right system, the right ritual, the right structure, we won't have to face the rawness of simply being human before the divine. Which is why these cultural collapses, as frightening as they might feel, also carry a strange mercy. Because when the scaffolding falls, it's not just the structures that collapse, it's the illusion of control. The false light falls with it. The pieces we mistook for God come down, and in the honest dark that follows, something truer becomes visible. A hope. Not born from certainty, but from surrender. A hope that doesn't depend on outcomes, but on awakening. A hope that rises precisely because we finally stop trying to manufacture it. And if we want to see what this awakened, stripped down, real, in the dark kind of hope actually looks like, not in theory, but in flesh and blood, we can do no better than to turn to a young Dutch woman named Etty Hillesum. Now, if you're not familiar with Etty Hillesum, she lived in Amsterdam in the early 1940s, writing in her journals as the world around her literally collapsed, what many would call an apocalypse in the doom-laden sense of the word. The laws tightened, the walls closed in. Eventually, she was sent to Westerbork transit camp and then to Auschwitz. She wrote from the darkest shadow of human history, and yet something in her had been shocked awake. As everything familiar crumbled, she began to see with a depth and clarity that almost defies belief. It's becoming clearer to me every day, she wrote, that we must seek the solution not in constructing new things, but in shedding old burdens. Shedding, not building. Letting go, not tightening our grip. Opening, not fortifying the walls. And for Hillesum, this shedding was hope. Not the sentimental kind we confuse with optimism, nor the circumstantial kind that depends on things turning out right. Her hope was what she called a widening of the heart, a way of seeing that made awakening, that her awakening made possible. It was the hope that appears when every false certainty has fallen away, not a hope of escape, but of presence. A hope born from perceiving the sacred still moving beneath the wreckage, spacious enough to hold both the darkness and the pulse of life still beating within it, big enough to hold the whole of things. It's the only kind of hope that could have enabled her to write, with a concentration camp looming in her future. And so I move gently from the attitude of despair into the attitude of hope. For Hillesum, hope wasn't the reward after the darkness. It was the way she met the darkness. It rose precisely because everything she once relied on was collapsing, revealing the real beneath the rubble. Hope became the widening, the inner spaciousness that awakening makes possible once we stop trying to grip or manage our way through the night. And that is the deep invitation of Advent. In the wake of an apocalypse, in the wake of an unveiling, we don't need to rebuild the rubble. We don't patch the scaffolding. We don't rush to construct a cleaner, cleverer, more airtight version of faith. That's just the mental rational trying to save itself again. Instead, Advent teaches us to wait, to listen for the deepest longing of our hearts, to stay awake in the dark long enough for our eyes to adjust, long enough to perceive what the shadows could never hide, to let the dark do its quiet work. Not to reconstruct, but to remember. And that requires practice. So, this year as a community, we're going to lean into that posture together through an Advent rhythm on Sunday mornings and on Substack. I'm not going to subject you to another slide about that, but you know where to find that to sign up if you haven't yet. It's in the app and on the website. But it's a place where we can keep watch with one another as this season unfolds. And I hope that you will consider joining us there, because this is where hope begins, in the dark, in the waiting, in the apocalypse, in the revealing, in the staying awake that sets us free. And so, indwelling divine, may we learn this Advent to get deeply in touch with our deepest longing, to awaken in the dark, and to cultivate in us and among us the kind of hope that depends on nothing, but is rooted in everything. Amen. Friends on the live stream, so glad that you joined us this morning. We're about to do something here in the room that we invite you to participate in online called What Are You Thinking, Sensing, and Feeling? And so what we'll do here is get in touch with what we are sensing and feeling before we discuss what we're thinking about the lesson, about the service, about our lives, about what's going on in the world, about whatever we want to talk about. And some folks are going to do that online with you this morning too. I think Chris is leading the group this morning, and he and his friends will be happy to welcome you. Just click the link that says, "What are you thinking?" It'll take you to a Zoom call. You will need a code to get in, and that code is 1417. They will be thrilled to welcome you there. So if you feel like you want to engage in that conversation this morning, please join them. And if you don't, or you're watching it another time during the week, there is another link beneath that one that invites us to send you a welcome email. It is not dissimilar to the one that Kaki mentioned earlier in our service, but this one has a little more remote specificity. And so we'll be happy to send that to you to give you a little bit more information about who we are and what we're about. And with that, friends in the room, can we dismiss our friends on the live stream by putting one hand on our heart and remembering that the deep longing that is in us is God's longing for us. Meister Eckhart tells us that God's longing, your longing for God is God's longing for you. It is all of a piece. And deep there in that space, we are called to cultivate radical hope. And so let's do that this week. Let's do that together and extend our other hand to our city and our world, because as we do that work, we want to share what is in us with everyone with whom we live, with whom we work, with whom we go to school, everyone we encounter on the street, as we do each week, taking seriously our commitment to being healers and repairers of our world. Folks online, God bless you. You are dismissed. And folks in the room, just invite you to get in touch with what you are sensing and feeling before we discuss what we are thinking.